Carson Wentz going to Washington. How did that happen? Why did it happen? And maybe most importantly, for the purposes of this show, as you talk to people around the league, what did they think of the deal?
Well, let's just start with the fact that the Washington Commanders were almost desperate, essentially, to get a quarterback and to get one that has experience. Ron Rivera, very transparent with the media, actually, in the last month or so, saying we are calling all 32 teams to see who is open because they know they need to make an upgrade there. So they weren't going to get Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers did not want to play in Washington. Russell Wilson did not want to play in Washington. He wanted to play with the Denver Broncos. Next up in the eyes of Washington was Carson Wentz. And there were other suitors, based on the conversations I had with the Indy side of all this, that were interested in trading for Carson Wentz. But in the end, Washington was willing to give the most, which we now know, on top of the fact that they're taking on his full $28 million contract, which is a bargain, in my opinion, for a starting quarterback with the experience that Carson Wentz has. And so, I think Washington feels they did well in this. And when you look at their offense, it's not as good, so to speak, as Indy in terms of their offensive line, their run game. We know there's no Jonathan Taylor in Washington, but they've got some fast receivers, and their run game is pretty good. And if their defense can look the way it did from what we saw 2 seasons ago, they could be good.
Here's the question on Carson Wentz. No one has ever questioned the talent. And Hembo, of course, is a Philadelphia fan, and he was hip to Carson Wentz being the problem, or at least you were feeding me numbers constantly suggesting that he was the problem before most people were talking about that in Philly. And your feelings on Carson Wentz are fair. At this point, would you boo Carson Wentz or Ben Simmons more loudly?
Yes.
Okay. That's the right answer. So here's the thing. Carson Wentz is a bargain as a starting quarterback, if he is indeed a good starting quarterback.
Yes.
But here's the problem, and Hembo, I will give you the floor quickly on this. A phrase that has become commonly used now is force multiplier, which is to say someone comes in and makes everybody else better. Tom Brady walks in the door and makes everybody else better. Carson Wentz, it feels like, has become a force divider, which is to say he walks in and it just doesn't work. And I don't know him personally. I've met him in my life maybe twice. I'm not making a value judgment about a human being based on anything other than what I've seen and what I've heard. But Hembo, it feels like Indy was willing to do anything to get him out the door, and they don't even have a plan B. Basically, their plan was anything is better than this. What does that tell us?
I mean, the Eagles won 5 more games than they did last year, and the Colts won 2 fewer. And Carson Wentz is the common denominator there. So we don't have to – you often say, like, pay no attention to what people say. Pay attention to what they do. So let's just look at what these teams have done. Over the course of 2 off seasons now, the Eagles and Colts will have paid him nearly $50 million to play for a different team. And the Colts traded Carson Wentz before the Eagles even used the first-round pick that they acquired for trading him. That's how badly they wanted him out of Indianapolis. There was a really good article yesterday in The Athletic that detailed sort of how it all went wrong in Indy. And it was not even half to do with his play on the field. Like, they just were done with him, the guy, as much as they were him, the quarterback.
And that, I think that's the interesting piece of this, Dianna, which is that Wentz, I thought that this was going to be his last shot. Like, I thought Indy was his best chance to resurrect himself. I'm a little surprised he gets another opportunity where they're handing him the starting job. He's walking in there as the starting quarterback, right? So this is really it. He's got one more shot to resurrect what looked at one point like a very promising career.
Well, first off, big shout out to former Jets and Browns head coach Eric Mangini. He is the first person I ever heard use force multiplier. He started that years ago, actually on ESPN. And I love the term because it's true. When you think about the great ones, they do make the ones around them that much better. And I don't know if Carson Wentz is a force multiplier at this point, but I think there's enough people in the league who believe that he still has a lot of talent if he can just work on that decision-making, the timing. Tim Hasselbeck, our colleague, was talking about it today. Nobody's questioning that, his ability. It's just going to be his ability as a leader. And we haven't really reported much on the facts of that, and sometimes that's a hard topic to cover, right? Because it's very subjective of if you like this person or not. But based on how this ended, with perhaps maybe they don't have a plan, the fact that they were willing to just trade away Carson Wentz, I think kind of tells you how they feel about him, at least the owner of the Colts. And look, it could have been the COVID thing when you remember Carson Wentz was not vaccinated.
Right.
Jim Irsay was very frustrated by that. And I do think the way they lost, and I do think it's unfair to pin it on Carson Wentz as to why they lost to the Jags, because I don't think there were a lot of players on that team that did not play well that game. But we know how the business goes. Someone has to take the blame.
All right, Greeny here with Dianna in our studio. It's time to say goodnight to that check engine light with the free AutoZone Fix Finder service. It'll help troubleshoot the likely cause of your light for free so you can drive with peace of mind. Restrictions apply. Get in the zone with AutoZone. And this was a planned conversation that we had before we knew Dianna was going to be able to be with us. But Hembo presented a theory to me in our office today. And I'm just interested to hear everyone's perspective on it, not Dianna,
Sure.
but everyone's perspective on it about so the Colts are probably, or they may replace Carson Wentz with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Okay.
That is not, at least in every way, an upgrade. But Hembo has a theory about why this will be perceived the way it'll be perceived.
Dianna, here's my theory, okay? If Carson Wentz looked like Jimmy Garoppolo, he would still be the Colts starting quarterback. In other words, if you're a beautiful person that plays badly, it's different than if you're a not so beautiful person that plays badly. I'm a numbers guy, you know that.
Yes.
Carson Wentz's numbers last year across the board were better than Jimmy Garoppolo's numbers, and yet Carson Wentz was literally given away, casted off, and now Jimmy Garoppolo might be his replacement.
So what Hembo is suggesting, and let me bring in, I want to make it clear, we're not just throwing this at Dianna. Let me bring in Bubba on this, because Bubba is a person, any of you who've ever seen him, you're aware, Bubba's a person who has always been viewed differently because he's so handsome. I mean, it's not easy to do. But when you look the way Jimmy Garoppolo does or Bubba does, like people just have a different perspective on you and different expectations from you. Do you think? Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.